Hello, everybody. This is Gemini Rising. I am here to tell you a little bit about art history, but not the traditional kind of art history, but art history from the female perspective. Today, we are going to talk about Hilma af Klint. This is some of her work here. You can see it is, they're very large paintings. These have been shown throughout the world now since 2013, when they were first shown by the Swedish Academy of Art. One of the interesting things is that these paintings were done in 1907 to 1915. This is Hilma as a young person. She was born in 1863 in Stockholm. Her father was a mathematician and also a general in the Royal Army. The Royal Navy. He was an admiral in the Royal Navy. In the summertime, she would go with her family to a small island in a lake just outside of Stockholm, where she would immerse herself in nature, and her fascination with nature and organic life began. In 1872, she moved to Stockholm with her family, where she attended the General School for Girls. In 1880, she went to the technical school where she studied portraiture, and interestingly enough, became a vegetarian and only mostly wore black. She had a great interest in the spiritual and the occult. This happened mainly because of the death of her younger sister that she was very close to. And at the time, she started attending seances and mystical group meetings. When she went in 1882, she became a student at the Royal Academy of Fine Art. She was one of the first women to do so, which was not very common in Europe. I think Sweden was one of the first countries that actually allowed women to attend the school. She spent the next 5 years studying drawing, portraiture, and landscape. Here are some of her early drawings: a self-portrait of herself, a portrait, some more landscapes, very typical of that time. And she basically used these paintings to support herself financially and give her independence and stability. She also did botanical drawings, which she did quite a few for books and things like that. And she did these kind of drawings through her whole life to be able to go on to what she was really interested in, which was studying religion and philosophy and having seances and talking to the dead and things like that, which was actually a very common thing at that time in Europe. People were very interested in the occult. She became a member of the Swedish Theosophical Society, which based its ideas on universal brotherhood of humanity. They didn't distinguish between race, creed, sex, or color. They encouraged the study of religion, philosophy, and science, and wanted to investigate the unexplained laws of nature. In 1896, she founded a group of 5 women who met once a week to discuss spiritual things. They did automatic writing and drawing with no preconceived subject or composition in mind, which is something that surrealists did, and they did it decades before, and they used it to generate their ideas. This is the machine that, or some similar to something they would have used. It's called the psychograph, and it's an instrument for recording spirit writings and drawings. And her group of 5 women spent their time discussing and having seances and talking to one another. In 1904, her work profoundly changed, as you can see here, compared to, the previous works of landscapes and things like that. She started doing automatic drawing. She heard a voice telling her that she should make paintings on the astral plane. She noted a voice of someone called Amaliel, who gave her the following message: "You are to proclaim a new philosophy of life, and you yourself have to be part of the new kingdom. Your labors will bear fruit." In 1906, at the age of 44, she began painting a series called the Paintings for the Temple, which resulted in 193 complete works, all very large. This first group consisted of smaller paintings called Primordial Chaos, and they were all created under the guidance of a high master. And I have to say, she kept all of these works very secret. She did not shared them with close friends and things like that, but the public did not know about her work. They saw her as a landscape painter, portraiture painter, and that kind of thing. And all of these works were done between 1906 and 1908. As you can see, they're non-representational. They are the first works to be not non-representational. 1906 was the first one she made, and it is considered that Vasily Kandinsky, who premiered his first painting in 1911, was the father of abstract expressionism, and this is all changed now with these paintings coming to the surface. Very, very large paintings, non-representational on the whole. There are a few, that you can see. For example, this one here, has some figures in it. And these are all paintings that she was planning on doing for a thing called the Temple, which she wanted to create, but that was never realized. So all of these paintings here, up until this one actually, up until this one actually, were done as the first set. She stopped for 4 years in 1908 because her mother went blind, and she took care of her, but she continued again in 1912 to 15 to finish another 82 works. So her complete works for the paintings for the temple were 193, and they were very large, which is quite interesting. Just before she had stopped, she met Rudolf Steiner, who was the leader of the German Theosophical Society, and he told her that her work, he couldn't decipher it, and he doubted anyone could in the next 50 years. So anyway, in 1912, she continued on with the rest of her pieces. These two are the Tree of Knowledge, and then she had a series all for the paintings for the temple. This part of the series was called The Swan, which are, again, like I said, all very, very large paintings, very beautiful, some of them very colorful, very interesting as far as I'm concerned, paintings done at a time where it was considered that men were the inventors, pioneers of abstract expressionism, where she had been doing it already way before. These are all still part of a group called the Swan. The last paintings here is accumulation for the temple paintings, all very beautiful, very colorful, and like I said before, very large. um, accumulating into these two pieces called the altarpiece. This one here and this one here. Uh, interestingly, uh, the she was, like I said, she was still doing her sort of naturalistic paintings. In 1914, during this time where she was finishing off these paintings, these big, large paintings that no one ever saw, she exhibited one of her paintings, this one here, which is what everybody thought she was doing, um, at an exhibit in Malmo, where Kandinsky also showed his work, um, and his painting from 1911, considered the father of abstract expressionistic painting. Um, in 1916, she developed, uh, started another series called Parseval, um, which resulted in 144 works on paper, which also represented the search for spiritual knowledge. In 1917, she did her next series where she studied atoms, and as she was concerned with the world beyond the observable. Um, this is a time when science was discovering things like X-rays, uh, atoms, subatomic particles, and she tried to create visual equivalents. And this is part of her notebook where she was figuring out how to do this. And then the last of the series, this one. And then in 1920, she started another series of small, reasonably small oil paintings where she explored the great world religions. She saw religions that were she saw that religions were based on duality, good and evil, order and chaos. She studied all of them: Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam. And these are all these oil paintings that were um, representational of her ideas of religion at the time. And this was in 1920. So you can see here, Judaism is another one. And again, very much the idea of duality in religion. So this was her final piece regarding that. In 1922, again influenced by the views of Rudolf Steiner, she gave up painting geometric compositions and started working in watercolor, where she allowed the flow of the color to dictate her subject matter. So these are more or less, you know, the early 20s, things that she had was interested in painting, very abstract watercolors. In 1927, like I said, she was always doing her typical work. This is a study of plants that she donated to the library in Dornach in, I think it's in Switzerland, I'm not sure, Switzerland or Germany, where she systemized nature according to her own research. But again, she was doing this just to make ends meet, and nobody had seen any of her work. I'll go back to this because it's so beautiful. She on her death, she left more than 1,200 works of art, which had only been seen by a handful of people, plus 125 notebooks that she detailed her thoughts, mediumship experiences, notes about her paintings. And in one notebook, she stipulated that her work should not be displayed until at least 20 years after her death. It was actually longer. She left all of her works to her great nephew, Um, in the 70s, he tried to donate her work to the Swedish Museum of Art, and they declined it. It wasn't until 1986, that one of her works was shown in a collective exhibition in Los Angeles, where they were showing women and spirituality. But in 2013, the Modern Museum in Stockholm hosted the first exhibition dedicated solely to her work. This is the first time she began to receive the acclaim that, or the work began to receive the acclaim that it deserved. 6 years later, the Guggenheim Museum in New York stated that its own retrospective had received 600,000 visitors, making it the most widely seen exhibition the museum had ever had. This is one of her final paintings that she did in 1932. It's a map of Great Britain, and according to some art experts, it was basically a prophetical painting, because here you can see the blowing of the fire onto Great Britain before the Second World War. She died in 1944 because of not a natural death. She actually was in a traffic accident and died of complications from her injuries. Like I said, her paintings were not seen the first time, 1986, but the big one was 2013. I think she's an amazing, amazing artist, and it's very interesting because now art historians are actually saying that she is actually the pioneer of the abstract expressionist movement 5 years before Vasily Kandinsky. And all of those abstract expressionists also use that method of automatic drawing and looking into the spiritual. They were all into that kind of stuff. Interestingly enough, Kandinsky and Piet Mondrian, who were also her contemporaries, died the same year that she did in 1944. I just find her very inspiring. I think that we need to look at this kind of work to see, this rests on the shoulders. What we do now is on the shoulders of people like Hilma af Klint. Obviously, there are many other women, and I would like this series to be about women, historical, modern women who have contributed to our society. And some of these things, like with her, are the only ones that ever that weren't heard, that didn't know. She had no contact with modern movements of her time. She never promoted herself, and she only showed this work to a very few. So obviously, she wasn't interested in fame. She was interested in self-exploration, which I think most artists are. And that's it for the first talk. Sorry about all the technical difficulties. I'm going to edit out the first part of this, I hope. And if you have any questions, if anybody's there, please ask now. If not, I will stop this. I'm going to put it back on this painting. Are there any questions out there I can read in the comments? I'll give it a minute, and then I will. Clara loves her so much. So there you go. I do too. I think she's amazing. And to think that she wasn't even, nobody even knew her until recently, which, like, even when I went to art school, I had no idea she existed, obviously. Um, yes, that's it. Okay, I'm stopping this stream now. Uh, Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching this. I hope that you will come to our next one, which is about Leonora Carrington, um, uh, which is going to be hosted by Bellew next Monday. So uh, have a good week, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed this.